The morning sun filtered through the massive viewport of Arcturus Prime Station, casting long shadows across the entrance hall, where hundreds of cadets gathered. Jake Morrison stood in line with the others, his heart beating faster than he wanted to admit. This was it, the moment he had worked toward for 3 years. The Galactic Military Academy accepted only the best, and somehow, a kid from Earth had made the cut. Around him, the diversity of the galaxy pressed close. A tall being with blue crystalline skin chatted with a creature that looked like a walking tree. Something with too many eyes floated past, its tentacles carrying luggage. Jake had studied all 43 species in the Alliance, but seeing them in person still amazed him. He was one of only 18 humans in a class of over 800. Nervous? Lisa Grant appeared at his elbow. She was another human, someone he had met during the selection process back on Earth. Her red hair was pulled back in a tight bun, regulation style. Terrified, Jake admitted with a grin. You? Same, but we made it this far, right? She bumped his shoulder with hers. Earth's counting on us. The line moved forward slowly. Each cadet stepped through a tall archway that glowed with soft blue light. The security scanner, someone had explained during orientation, was ancient technology. The progenitor race had built it thousands of years ago, long before any current species had reached the stars. It read everything about a person in seconds. Identity, health status, contraband, weapons. Nothing got past it. Jake watched as a massive reptilian cadet walked through. The light flickered green. Next came someone who looked almost human except for the purple skin and silver eyes. Green again. The process was smooth and quick. Security officers barely looked up from their stations. Next, a bored voice called. Jake stepped forward. His boots clicked on the polished floor. He could feel eyes on him. Humans were still new to the Alliance, barely 50 years since first contact. Some species welcomed them. Others remained suspicious. He wanted to make a good impression, to show that humans belonged here. He took a breath and walked through the archway. The light turned red instantly. A sound like tearing metal screamed through the hall. Every head turned. The scanner's glow intensified, pulsing angry crimson, and then it simply stopped. The archway went dark. The hum of power that had been constant all morning died. Jake froze. He stood in the dead scanner, unsure what to do. Had he broken it? That didn't seem possible. It was progenitor technology built to last millennia. Step back. A security officer rushed forward. His species was Tholian, insectoid with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Commander Vrex, Jake remembered from the orientation packet, head of security. Jake stepped backward carefully, hands raised. I don't know what happened. I wasn't carrying anything. Everyone stand clear. Vrex's voice carried authority. Other security personnel formed a perimeter. Cadets pressed back, creating a wide circle around Jake. Whispers started growing louder. Did you see that? It just died. What's wrong with the human? Lisa pushed through the crowd. Jake didn't do anything wrong. Check his bags, scan him again, whatever you need to do. Vrex's antennae twitched, a sign of irritation Jake had read about. The scanner has never malfunctioned. Not in 300 years of operation at this facility. Then maybe it's just old, Lisa shot back. You can't blame him for equipment failure. Remove him to holding room 3, Vrex ordered. 2 security officers moved toward Jake, their hands on stunners. Jake didn't resist. Fighting would only make things worse. He let them escort him away, feeling the stares of every cadet in the hall. This was not how he had imagined his first day going. Behind him, he heard Lisa arguing with Vrex, demanding fairness, demanding answers. The holding room was small and plain. Gray walls, a single table, 2 chairs. They left him there alone with his duffel bag. Through a window, he could see technicians swarming around the scanner, running diagnostics with handheld devices. More officials arrived, including an avian instructor he recognized as Kale, one of the combat training officers. Minutes stretched into hours. Jake sat and waited, replaying the moment in his mind. He had walked through the scanner. It had screamed. That was all. No explosion, no attack, nothing dramatic. Just a machine that stopped working. The door finally opened. Vrex entered, followed by a being Jake didn't recognize. She was roughly humanoid, but made of what looked like living crystal. Faceted surfaces catching the light and breaking it into rainbows. Her eyes were deep purple, multifaceted like gemstones. I am Dr. Yenna, she said. Her voice had a musical quality like wind chimes. "I specialize in xenobiology. I need to run some tests. Am I under arrest?" Jake asked. "No," Vrex said, though he didn't sound happy about it. "You are being detained pending investigation." "There is a difference." Dr. Yenna moved around the table with instruments Jake didn't recognize. She passed a wand over his body, studied readouts, took samples. Her manner was professional and detached, more curious than hostile. "Tell me about your medical history," she said. Jake ran through it. Standard childhood illnesses. A broken arm at age 12. Nothing unusual. Dr. Yenna made notes on a holographic display that appeared in the air. "Any genetic modifications?" she asked. "No, I'm baseline human. Family history of unusual abilities? My grandfather was in the military. He had some medals for bravery. That's about it." Jake frowned. "Why, what are you looking for?" Dr. Yenna exchanged a glance with Vrex. The scanner detected something. Not contraband, not a weapon. Something biological. "Something in you." A chill ran down Jake's spine. "I'm not sick. Earth's medical screening was thorough before they let me leave." "I did not say you were ill," Dr. Yenna replied. "I said the scanner detected something. We need to understand what." They took him to medical after that. More tests, more scans. They drew blood, analyzed his cellular structure, mapped his nervous system. Jake cooperated with everything, hoping that compliance would prove his innocence. Through the medical bay windows, he saw other cadets moving through the station, beginning their training. He should have been with them. Lisa visited when they finally allowed it. She brought food from the cafeteria and news from outside. "Half the cadets think you're a spy," she said, dropping into the chair across from him. "The other half think you're carrying some kind of bioweapon." "Great," Jake muttered. "And what do you think?" "I think this is ridiculous. The scanner is old progenitor junk. Maybe it was time for it to break." She pushed a tray toward him. "Eat something." "You look terrible." The food was bland but filling. Jake realized he hadn't eaten since breakfast before the shuttle to the station. "Did they test the other humans?" Lisa nodded. "All 17 of us. Scanner worked fine for everyone else. You're special, apparently. That was worse somehow. If the scanner had failed for all humans, it would be a species issue. Something to research and understand. But just him? That made it personal. That made him a problem." Over the next 2 days, Jake remained in medical isolation while scientists and security experts debated his fate. He could see them through the windows, arguing in clusters. Instructor Kale visited once, studying Jake with sharp avian eyes but saying nothing. Vrex came by regularly, always checking security protocols, always watching. On the 3rd day, Dr. Yenna returned. She looked tired, her crystalline surface slightly dimmer. "We found something," she said without preamble. "Your adrenal system. When you experience stress, your hormonal response is significantly elevated compared to baseline human averages." Jake blinked. "So I get nervous? That's why the scanner broke?" "Not exactly." Dr. Yenna pulled up holographic displays showing chemical structures and biological systems Jake didn't fully understand. The scanner was built by the progenitors to detect threats. Not weapons or explosives. Biological threats. Beings whose physiology makes them dangerous. "I'm not dangerous," Jake protested. "That remains to be determined." Vrex stood in the doorway, arms crossed over his chitinous chest. "The Academy Council has reached a decision. You will be allowed to continue training under strict supervision. You will wear a monitoring bracelet at all times. You will undergo regular medical checks. Any sign of aggressive behavior, any threat to other cadets, and you will be expelled immediately." Relief washed over Jake, followed quickly by frustration. He was being treated like a criminal for something he didn't do, something he didn't understand, but at least they weren't sending him home. "I'll accept those terms," he said. Dr. Yenna attached the bracelet to his wrist. It was smooth metal, warm against his skin, and it felt like a shackle. "This monitors your vital signs and hormonal levels. Do not attempt to remove it." They released him that afternoon. Jake walked through the station toward the cadet dormitories, very aware of how people looked at him. Conversation stopped when he passed. Groups of cadets moved away. Only Lisa was waiting at his quarters, standing like a guard at the door. "Welcome back," she said. "It's going to be rough for a while." "I can handle rough," Jake replied, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. Inside his assigned room, Jake unpacked his duffel and stared at the bracelet on his wrist. Somewhere in the ancient programming of a progenitor scanner, Something had recognized him as dangerous. But Training began the next morning at dawn cycle, which on Arcturus Prime meant the station's lights gradually brightened to simulate sunrise. Jake woke before the alarm, his sleep having been restless and full of half-remembered dreams about failing scanners and pointing fingers. The bracelet on his wrist had grown warm during the night, a constant reminder that he was being watched. The cafeteria was crowded with cadets grabbing breakfast before first formation. Jake loaded his tray with protein paste and something that might have been fruit and looked for a place to sit. The usual social dynamic of a military academy was already forming. Groups clustered by species, by shared language, by common ground. He spotted Lisa waving from a table near the back. "Saved you a seat," she said as he approached. Two other humans sat with her, both looking uncomfortable as Jake joined them. "Thanks." Jake sat down and immediately noticed the empty chairs around their table. Other cadets had left space, a buffer zone between themselves and the human who had broken the scanner. The two other humans introduced themselves as Danny, a stocky guy from the Asian Federation, and Claire, a tall woman from the European Union. They were polite but distant, making small talk about the training schedule while clearly wanting to be elsewhere. Jake couldn't blame them. Association with him might damage their own reputations. "First session is physical conditioning," Claire said, reading from her datapad. "Then we have tactical theory with instructor Kale, followed by weapons familiarization." "Assuming they let you near weapons," Danny added, then looked embarrassed. "Sorry, that came out wrong." "It's fine," Jake said, though it wasn't. "I get it. Nobody knows what to make of me." Lisa kicked Danny under the table. "Jake hasn't done anything wrong. The scanner malfunctioned. That's it." Before anyone could respond, the cafeteria lights flickered twice. The signal for formation. All cadets were to report to the main training yard immediately. They cleared their trays and headed out in a stream of mixed species, all wearing the same gray cadet uniforms. The training yard was enormous, large enough to accommodate different environmental needs. One section had higher gravity for species that evolved on heavy worlds. Another was filled with water for aquatic beings. The atmosphere was carefully controlled to provide breathable air for everyone, a minor miracle of technology. Instructor Kale stood at the front, his feathers ruffled by the artificial wind. His species, the Aviacs, were natural flyers with hollow bones and sharp vision. He was famous at the academy for being tough but fair. "Welcome to hell," Kyle announced, his voice carrying across the yard. "For the next 4 months, you will learn what it means to serve in the United Alliance fleet. Some of you will fail. Some of you will quit. Those who remain will become something greater than yourselves." The conditioning course was brutal. Obstacle walls, rope climbs, endurance runs, and strength challenges designed to push every species to their limits. Jake threw himself into it, determined to prove he belonged. His muscles burned. His lungs ached. The bracelet on his wrist monitored everything, sending data to medical and security. He wasn't the fastest cadet. Several species had natural advantages in speed or agility, but he kept going when others faltered, pushing through pain and exhaustion. Lisa kept pace beside him, equally determined. They finished the course in the middle of the pack, respectable if not impressive. Instructor Kale walked among the exhausted cadets, noting performance. When he reached Jake, he paused. "Adequate," he said, which from Kale was apparently high praise. "Report to my office after tactical theory." The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Tactical theory involved holographic simulations of space battles, learning to read sensor displays and coordinate fleet movements. Jake found he had a knack for it, seeing patterns in the chaos that others missed. Dr. Yenna observed from the back of the classroom, taking notes. When the session ended, Jake made his way to Kale's office. The instructor's quarters were sparse, decorated only with commendations and battle honors. Kale gestured for Jake to sit. "I reviewed your medical reports," Kale said without preamble. "Dr. Yenna's findings are fascinating." "Sir, I don't understand what they mean," Jake admitted. "She said something about my adrenal system, but I feel normal." Kale's head tilted, a bird-like gesture. "Normal for a human, perhaps. But humans are not normal, Cadet. Your species has only been part of the Alliance for 50 years. We are still learning about you. Is that why the scanner reacted to me?" The progenitor scanners were designed to detect biological threats, warriors, killers, beings whose bodies are built for Violence. Kyle's sharp eyes fixed on Jake. Your species qualifies. Jake felt cold despite the warm office. Humans aren't monsters. I did not say you were. But your evolution was different from most Alliance species. You are pursuit predators built for endurance and adaptation. Your adrenal system allows you to override pain and fear. You can push your bodies beyond normal limits when necessary. Kale leaned forward. The scanner detected that potential in you, perhaps more strongly than in other humans. What does that mean for me? It means you will be watched closely. It also means you may be capable of more than you realize. Kale stood, signaling the conversation was over. Do not waste this opportunity, Cadet. Prove that human potential includes honor and discipline, not just violence. Jake left the office with more questions than answers. He headed to the dormitory to change for weapons training, his mind spinning. The corridor was empty except for a group of 4 cadets who stepped out to block his path. They were Kryn, a warrior species with thick scales and aggressive reputations. The human, the largest one said, "We heard about you, about what the scanner found." Jake stopped, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. "I'm just trying to get to class. You should go home," another Kryn said. "Before someone gets hurt." "I'm not going to hurt anyone," Jake replied calmly, though his heart rate was increasing. He felt the bracelet warm against his wrist as it registered his stress response. "Maybe not intentionally." The large Kryn moved closer. "But your kind is unstable, dangerous. The Alliance made a mistake accepting humans." Lisa's voice cut through the tension. "Back off." She emerged from a side corridor with 3 other cadets, all human. Danny and Claire were with her, along with someone Jake didn't recognize. "Jake has as much right to be here as anyone." The Kryn looked at the humans, calculating odds. For a moment, Jake thought it would turn into a fight. Then Commander Vrex rounded the corner, his insectoid form moving with surprising speed. "Is there a problem?" Vrex's multiple eyes took in the scene. "No problem," the large Kryn said. "We were just leaving." They moved past, deliberately bumping Jake's shoulder as they went. Vrex watched them go, then turned to Jake. "You seem to attract trouble, Cadet." "I'm not looking for it." "Sir?" "See that you continue not to." Vrex's antennae twitched. "But if trouble finds you anyway, defend yourself. The Academy does not tolerate bullying." He walked away, leaving Jake surprised. That was almost supportive. "Thanks for the backup," Jake said to Lisa and the others. "We're humans here together," the unfamiliar cadet said, extending a hand. "I'm Kevin, from the African Union. Figured we should stick together." Weapons training was held in a secured facility with multiple ranges. The instructor, a being whose species Jake couldn't identify, demonstrated energy rifles, plasma pistols, and various blade weapons. Each cadet was issued practice weapons keyed to their biometrics. When Jake approached the counter, the armory officer hesitated. "Your authorization has been flagged." "Let me guess," Jake said. "The bracelet. You are cleared for training weapons only. Live ammunition requires Commander Vrex's approval." The officer handed over a practice rifle. "Don't make me regret this." The rifle felt good in Jake's hands. Earth military training had familiarized him with various weapons, though none quite like this. The targeting system linked to his vision, displaying range and trajectory. He took position at the firing line. The first few shots were off target. He adjusted, compensating for the weapon's unique characteristics. By his 10th shot, he was hitting center mass consistently. By the 20th, he was grouping shots tight enough to impress the instructor. "Natural talent," the instructor noted. "Or prior training?" "Earth military, sir. 2 years before I applied here." Well, continue. Let's see how you handle moving targets." The range shifted, holograms appearing and disappearing at random intervals. Jake fell into the rhythm of it, his mind clearing. This he understood. This was simple. Identify threat, acquire target, fire. No politics, no suspicion, just skill and practice. He finished the session in the top 10% of his class. Lisa did well too, along with several other humans. Whatever else might be true, humans could shoot. That evening, back in his quarters, Jake reviewed the day. The confrontation with the Kryn bothered him. He had remained calm, but he had felt the adrenaline surge, the readiness for violence if needed. Was that what the scanner had detected? That potential for aggression lurking under his civilized surface? His datapad chimed with a message from Dr. Yenna. She wanted to see him in her lab immediately. Jake changed into clean fatigues and headed to the research section of the station. Dr. Yena's lab was filled with equipment and displays showing complex. 3 weeks passed and Jake settled into the brutal routine of academy training. Each day began before dawn cycle with physical conditioning that left even the strongest cadets gasping. Tactical classes filled the mornings, while afternoons alternated between weapons practice, survival training, and ship systems operations. Evenings were dedicated to study and equipment maintenance. The schedule was designed to break the weak and forge the strong into something capable of protecting the Alliance. Jake excelled despite the scrutiny. His test scores ranked in the top 15% of the class. His physical performance steadily improved as his body adapted to the demanding regimen. The bracelet on his wrist had become so familiar he barely noticed it anymore, though he knew medical and security reviewed his data daily. The social isolation was harder to adapt to. Most cadets still avoided him. The Kryn who had confronted him continued making hostile comments, though they never escalated to physical violence. A few species were openly friendly. Lisa and the other humans, of course, but also a quiet insectoid named Zek who shared lab assignments with Jake and, surprisingly, a massive quadruped from a heavy gravity world who simply didn't care about politics. Instructor Kale continued to watch Jake with particular interest. During combat simulations, Kale would position Jake in leadership roles, forcing him to make tactical decisions under pressure. Jake discovered he had an instinct for it, seeing solutions that weren't obvious, finding ways to accomplish objectives with minimal casualties. One afternoon during a particularly complex simulation, Jake's unit was tasked with rescuing hostages from a hijacked cargo vessel. The scenario was designed to be nearly impossible. The enemy was heavily armed, the ship's layout favored defenders, and time was critical before the hostages were executed. Most previous teams had attempted direct assault and failed. Jake studied the situation and took a different approach. He divided his unit into 3 elements. One created a noisy diversion at the main airlock. Another cut power to specific sections of the ship, creating confusion. His smallest element, just Jake and 2 others, entered through a damaged maintenance hatch that sensors had marked as sealed but not verified. They moved through the dark corridors using night vision, bypassing security, and reached the hostages before the enemy could react. The simulation ended with all hostages rescued and 0 friendly casualties. The performance was so unusual that Kale replayed it for the entire class. "This," Kale said, pausing the holographic replay, "is lateral thinking." Cadet Morrison did not fight the scenario as designed. He found a weakness and exploited it. This is what separates adequate soldiers from exceptional ones. Jake felt eyes on him throughout the analysis. Some were admiring. Others were suspicious, as if his success somehow proved he was dangerous. After class, Danny approached him in the corridor. "That was impressive," Danny said. "The way you saw that maintenance hatch possibility." "Just luck," Jake replied, though it hadn't been. He had spent extra time studying the ship schematics, looking for options others might miss. "I don't think it was luck." Danny glanced around to make sure they weren't overheard. "Look, I wanted to apologize for being distant when you first got here. The other humans and I talked about it. We were scared that being associated with you would hurt our chances. That was cowardly. I understand. This place is hard enough without extra complications." "Maybe. But we're humans together in a station full of aliens. We should have each other's backs." Danny extended his hand. "Fresh start?" Jake shook it, feeling something loosen in his chest. Fresh start. That evening, Jake found himself invited to a study group with the other human cadets. They gathered in Lisa's quarters, spreading out tactical manuals and ship specifications. The conversation drifted from coursework to life back on Earth, to the strangeness of being so far from home. "My little sister cried when I left," Claire said quietly. "She thought I was never coming back. I promised her I'd visit, but that was before I understood how expensive travel is. It could be years before I can afford a trip home." "My parents were proud," Kevin said, "but also scared. Humans are still new to all this. We don't have generations of tradition in the fleet like other species do. We're making it up as we go." "That's what makes it exciting," Lisa countered. "We get to define what human service means. We're not copying anyone else's model." "We're also under more scrutiny," Danny pointed out, glancing at Jake. "Every mistake reflects on all of us. Every success, too." Jake had been quiet, listening to the others. Now he spoke up. Do you ever feel like you have to be perfect? Like there's no room for being just okay? Heads nodded around the room. Every day, Claire said. I'm terrified of failing. Not just for me, but because I represent Earth, it's exhausting. We all feel it, Lisa agreed. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it pushes us to be better than we would be otherwise. The conversation continued late into the night cycle. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Jake felt like he belonged somewhere. These people understood the pressure, the isolation, the determination to prove humanity's worth. They were allies in the truest sense. The next day brought a new type of training, emergency response scenarios. The cadets were divided into mixed species teams and presented with various crisis situations. Ship fires, hull breaches, medical emergencies, and system failures. Each team had to coordinate despite language barriers and different physiological needs. Jake's team included Lisa, one of the Kryn who had confronted him before, an aquatic being who had to wear a breathing apparatus outside water, and Zek the insectoid. The Kryn, whose name was Torv, made his displeasure obvious. Stuck with humans, Torv muttered. This will be a disaster. Then help us make it not a disaster, Jake replied evenly. We succeed or fail as a team. Their first scenario was a shipboard fire with simulated casualties. Smoke filled the training area, obscuring vision. Alarms blared. Holographic flames blocked corridors. They had 15 minutes to locate and evacuate 5 injured crew members while containing the fire. Torv immediately tried to take charge, ordering everyone to follow him toward the main fire. Jake stopped him. That's what killed the last 3 teams. The fire is a distraction. Look at the damage pattern. It's spreading from engineering, which means the injured crew would have evacuated toward life support, not toward us. You think you know better than me? Torv challenged. I think we should check both possibilities. You take Lisa and the fire extinguishers handle the flames. Zek's thermal vision can see through smoke. He'll come with me to find casualties. Our aquatic teammate can check the flooded lower section where no one else can go. For a moment, Jake thought Torv would refuse. Then Instructor Kale's voice came over the comm. Time is wasting, cadets. Torv snarled but grabbed the extinguishers. Fine, but if you're wrong, I'm reporting this. Jake and Zek moved through smoke-filled corridors. Zek's insectoid eyes could detect heat signatures, and he quickly identified 3 casualties in a sealed compartment. While they worked to extract the injured, their aquatic teammate found 2 more in a flooded section. Meanwhile, Torv and Lisa successfully contained the fire before it reached critical ship systems. They evacuated all 5 casualties with 2 minutes to spare. It was one of the fastest times recorded for that scenario. Kale nodded approval as they exited the training area, coughing and covered in synthetic soot. Adequate teamwork, Kale said. Morrison, explain your tactical approach. Jake detailed his reasoning while Torv listened with folded arms and a grudging expression. When Jake finished, Kale turned to the Kryn. Torv, did Morrison's strategy compromise the mission? No, Torv admitted slowly. It was sound. Then I suggest you remember that competence is not species-specific. Dismissed. As they walked back to the locker rooms, Torv caught up to Jake. You were right, he said stiffly. About checking both possibilities. It was a team effort, Jake replied. No, you led and I followed. That goes against my instincts. Kryn do not follow humans. Torv's scales rippled, a sign of discomfort. But perhaps instincts can be wrong. It wasn't friendship, but it was a start. Jake showered and changed, noticing that the bracelet on his wrist had barely warmed during the exercise. His stress levels had remained relatively normal despite the pressure. He was learning to manage the anxiety, to channel it into focus rather than fear. That week, Dr. Yenna called him to her lab again. She had more data to share, more pieces of the puzzle about what the progenitor scanner had detected. I mapped your neural patterns during the rescue simulation, she explained, showing holographic brain scans. When you made decisions under pressure, specific regions showed unusual activity. Pattern recognition, threat assessment, tactical analysis, all operating at levels higher than baseline human average. Is that bad? Jake asked. It is interesting. Your brain processes danger differently. You become calmer and more focused when others would panic. She cycled through more data. I also found historical records of human performance in emergencies. Ship disasters, natural catastrophes, combat situations. Humans consistently show what we call stress paradox. Your performance improves under life-threatening pressure. You're saying humans are good in a crisis. I am saying humans are exceptional in a crisis. Your biology provides. The summons came during breakfast. Jake was eating with the other human cadets discussing an upcoming examination on fleet logistics when Commander Vrex approached their table. Conversations around them died as other cadets noticed the security chief's presence. "Cadet Morrison," Vrex said formally, "the Academy Council requires your presence immediately." Jake's stomach dropped. This was it. Whatever decision they had reached about his future, about humanity's place in the fleet, it was happening now. He stood, abandoning his tray. Lisa started to rise as well, but Rex's gesture stopped her. "Only Morrison. The rest of you continue your meal." The walk to the council chambers felt endless. They passed through corridors Jake had come to know well over the past month, but now everything seemed foreign and threatening. Vrex said nothing, his compound eyes reflecting light as they walked. Jake's bracelet warmed slightly as his heart rate increased. The council chambers were impressive, designed to accommodate all species in comfort. Gravity could be adjusted for different sections, atmosphere was carefully controlled, and seating ranged from perches to water tanks. 7 council members sat in a semicircle, representatives from major alliance species. Instructor Kale stood to one side along with Dr. Yenna. Cadet Jake Morrison, the council chairperson, began. She was Velzari like Dr. Yenna, her crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns. "We have reviewed your case extensively. Your performance, your biology, the security concerns you represent." Jake stood at attention, saying nothing. "Let them speak first. Your academic performance is exemplary," another council member said. This one a being whose species Jake couldn't identify. Something like living smoke in a vaguely humanoid form. "Your tactical thinking is creative and effective. Instructor Kale speaks highly of your potential." "However," a third member interrupted, their translated voice harsh, "you represent an unknown variable. The progenitor scanner flagged you for a reason. We cannot ignore that warning." "The debate has been intense," the chairperson continued. "Some members believe humans should be barred from military service entirely. Others see your species as valuable assets. We require more information to make a final determination." Here it comes, Jake thought. Expulsion or acceptance. Therefore, the council has decided to propose a test. The Crucible. Jake's breath caught. Every cadet knew about the Crucible. It was a legendary evaluation, designed for special operations candidates, beings who would undertake the most dangerous missions the Alliance could conceive. First-year cadets never attempted it. Most never attempted it at all, choosing safer career paths. The Crucible tests everything, the chairperson explained. Physical endurance, combat capability, problem-solving under duress, leadership, ethics, and character. It lasts 72 hours without rest. Many who attempt it fail. Some are injured. A few do not survive, even with medical teams standing by. "You want me to pass the Crucible," Jake said slowly, "to prove humans belong in the fleet." "We want you to attempt it," the smoke being corrected. "Success would demonstrate human potential. Failure would suggest that perhaps humans are not ready for military service at this level. And if I refuse, then you will be expelled," Vrex said from behind him. "Along with all other human cadets currently enrolled. Future human applications will be denied pending further review, which could take decades." The weight of that settled on Jake's shoulders like a physical burden. 18 human careers were depending on him. Earth's relationship with the Alliance might hinge on his performance. It wasn't fair to put this on one person, but fair didn't seem to be a consideration. "When would this test occur?" Jake asked. "In 1 week," the chairperson replied. "That gives you time to prepare, though the Crucible cannot truly be prepared for. It adapts to each candidate, presenting challenges specific to their species and capabilities." "I'll do it," Jake said. What choice did he have? "The council appreciates your willingness," the chairperson said, though her tone suggested she knew he had no real option. "You are dismissed. Prepare well." Jake left the chambers with his mind racing. 1 week, 72 hours of continuous testing, everything riding on his performance. He found Lisa waiting in the corridor outside, having apparently followed despite Vrex's orders. "What happened?" she demanded. Jake explained as they walked back toward the dormitories. Lisa's expression shifted from shock to anger to determination. "This is insane," she said. "They're making an example of you. One person can't represent an entire species." "Apparently I can," Jake replied. "Or I have to try." Word spread quickly through the academy. By that afternoon, everyone knew about Jake's upcoming test. Reactions varied wildly. Some cadets expressed support. Others made bets on how quickly he would fail. The Kryn, including Torv, seemed genuinely interested to see how a human would perform. The other human cadets gathered in Jake's quarters that evening. All 17 of them squeezed into the small space, sitting on bunks and floor. "You don't have to do this," Danny said. "We could petition the council, argue that it's unreasonable." "They'll just expel all of us immediately," Jake countered. "At least this way there's a chance. A chance for you to get killed," Claire pointed out. "The Crucible has a mortality rate. Small, but real." "I'm not planning to die," Jake said with more confidence than he felt. Lisa had pulled up information about previous Crucible attempts on her datapad. Only 12 beings have passed it in the last 20 years. All of them were experienced soldiers, not first-year cadets. The fastest completion time was 60 hours. The average is 71 hours. "So I just need to be average," Jake joked weakly. Kevin wasn't amused. "Jake, this isn't funny. If you fail, we all go home. Earth's military partnership with the Alliance could end. That's thousands of potential careers, billions in defense funding, trade relationships, everything." "I know." Jake felt the weight of it pressing down on him. "I know what's at stake. Then let us help you prepare," Lisa said firmly. "We've got 1 week. We'll train together, study together, do everything we can to get you ready." For the next 7 days, Jake barely slept. The human cadets became his dedicated support team. They researched previous Crucible challenges, trained with him in the gym, ran tactical scenarios, and drilled him on every subject they could think of. Lisa managed logistics and nutrition. Danny focused on physical conditioning. Claire handled medical knowledge. Kevin worked on psychological preparation. Other cadets noticed the intense preparation. Some offered assistance. Zek the insectoid shared survival techniques from his home world. Torv the Kryn actually approached Jake in the training gym one evening. "I still think humans are unpredictable," Torv said bluntly, "but you have courage. If you face the Crucible, you will need more than courage. You will need stubbornness." "I can be stubborn," Jake replied. "Good, do not quit. No matter how much you want to, do not quit. That is how Kryn survive our warrior trials." Torv extended a clawed hand. "I will not wish you luck. Luck is for the weak. I will wish you strength." They clasped forearms in the Kryn fashion and Torv left. Jake stared after him, surprised. Maybe he was making more allies than he realized. Instructor Kale called Jake to his office 2 days before the Crucible. The avian officer had been mostly absent during the preparation week, but now he studied Jake with those sharp predator eyes. "You understand what you are attempting?" Kyle said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. The Crucible will find your weaknesses. It will exploit them. Physical limitations, mental fatigue, moral dilemmas. Everything you fear will be tested." Kyle spread holographic displays showing various challenges. "You cannot prepare for everything. You can only prepare yourself to adapt." "Sir, can I ask you something?" Kale gestured for him to continue. "Do you think I can pass?" The instructor was quiet for a long moment. "I think you have abilities that other species lack. Pattern recognition, stress management, tactical creativity. But the Crucible is not about ability alone. It is about character, about who you are when everything else is stripped away." "And who am I?" "That," Kale said, "is what we will discover." The night before the Crucible, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in his mind. What would they throw at him? Combat situations were likely. Puzzles and problems. Moral choices. Leadership challenges. 72 hours of continuous testing without rest. His datapad chimed softly, a message from his parents back on Earth. They had heard about the test somehow. News traveled through military channels. His father's message was short and simple. "We're proud of you, son. Whatever happens, we're proud. Come home safe." Jake read it 3 times, then put the pad away. Tomorrow would determine not just his future, but the future of human service in the United Alliance fleet. No pressure. At dawn cycle, he rose and dressed in the combat fatigues specified for Crucible candidates. He ate a high-protein breakfast, hydrated carefully, and checked his equipment. The bracelet on his wrist had been replaced with a specialized monitoring device that would track him through the entire test. The other human cadets met him at the entrance to the Crucible facility. They couldn't go inside, couldn't help once he started, but they wanted to see him off. "Remember," Lisa said, gripping his shoulders, "you're not just fighting for." Jake hit water hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. Cold surrounded him instantly, shocking his system. His combat training kicked in automatically. Orient, assess, survive. He couldn't see anything in the darkness, but he felt the current pulling him. He swam upward, following instinct and the slight pressure change that indicated surface. He broke through, gasping, treading water in what appeared to be a massive underground pool. Emergency lights activated, casting everything in red. A holographic timer appeared at the edge of his vision, projected by the monitoring device. 72 hours. The first minute had already passed. A platform emerged from the water 20 meters away. Jake swam to it, pulled himself up, and assessed the situation. His uniform was soaked but designed to dry quickly. His equipment pack was waterproof. He had basic supplies, nutrition bars, water purification tablets, basic medical kit, multi-tool. Nothing else. The chamber he found himself in had 5 visible exits, each leading to darkness. A holographic message appeared. Challenge 1, navigation. Find the correct path. Choose wisely. Time penalty for wrong choices, 2 hours per incorrect attempt. Great. A maze with time penalties. Jake examined each exit carefully. 4 looked identical, but the 5th showed slight water damage around the frame. Water flows downward naturally. If this chamber flooded regularly, that exit would show the most wear. He chose it. The tunnel beyond sloped upward, confirming his theory. It opened into a chamber filled with what looked like climbing equipment and a vertical shaft extending upward beyond the light's reach. Another holographic message appeared. Challenge 2, Ascension. Reach the top. You have 1 hour. Jake looked at the equipment. Ropes, harnesses, climbing tools designed for various species. Some had wings or climbing appendages built into their biology. Humans had to rely on tools and technique. He geared up methodically, checking each piece of equipment. Then he began to climb. The shaft was deliberately difficult, with smooth sections offering few handholds and others covered in loose material that crumbled under pressure. Jake climbed carefully but quickly, using techniques learned in Earth's military training. His arms burned. His fingers cramped. But he kept moving upward, always upward. He reached the top with 11 minutes to spare, pulling himself onto a platform and lying there for a moment, catching his breath. The timer continued counting down, no rest. The Crucible didn't care about tired muscles or burning lungs. The next chamber contained a tactical scenario. Holographic enemies, simulated civilians, complex terrain. Jake had to extract hostages while neutralizing threats without causing civilian casualties. He ran the scenario 3 times before finding a solution that satisfied the parameters. Each failure cost him time and added to his growing exhaustion. Hours blurred together. Physical challenges mixed with mental puzzles. Combat simulations alternated with diplomatic scenarios. Jake found himself negotiating with simulated alien dignitaries, then immediately afterward running an obstacle course designed for beings with 6 legs. He adapted, improvised, kept moving forward. At the 20-hour mark, his body was screaming for rest. His eyes burned. His muscles trembled with fatigue. But the timer kept counting down, and new challenges kept appearing. A maze of mirrors and light puzzles. A zero-gravity combat simulation. A medical emergency where he had to treat injuries on species whose biology he barely understood. He made mistakes. A wrong turn in one maze cost him an hour. A tactical error in a combat sim got his entire holographic team killed and forced a restart. Each failure dug into his confidence, but he pushed through. Quitting wasn't an option. Too many people were depending on him. At 30 hours, Jake started hallucinating. He saw his parents standing in doorways that weren't there. Lisa's voice called to him from empty corridors. He knew it wasn't real, knew his exhausted brain was playing tricks, but the line between simulation and delusion was getting harder to find. The 40th hour brought a new type of challenge, ethical dilemmas presented as tactical scenarios. A ship was failing with 200 crew aboard. He could save everyone by sacrificing the ship's cargo, which included critical medical supplies for a colony world. Or he could preserve the cargo and save only half the crew. There was no perfect answer, only choices with different costs. Jake chose to save the crew. People over cargo always, the simulation judged him. Acceptable but not optimal. The supplies could save thousands. Your choice will doom many to save a few. It was the trolley problem writ large, the kind of ethical nightmare that commanders faced in real wars. Jake moved on, the weight of that decision sitting heavy in his gut even though he knew it was just a simulation. At 50 hours, his body was failing. He stumbled through an obstacle course that should have been easy. His coordination shot. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold tools. The monitoring device on his wrist was almost hot now, registering dangerous levels of stress hormones and physical exhaustion. But he kept going. 55 hours. A leadership challenge. He had to coordinate a simulated team through a crisis, managing different species with different needs and communication styles. His sleep-deprived brain struggled to keep track of everyone, to translate orders into forms each species could understand and execute. But he did it somehow, leading them through the scenario to success. 60 hours. The exact average completion time for previous successful candidates. Jake still had multiple challenges remaining. He was behind schedule. At 65 hours, Jake faced what appeared to be the final challenge. A massive combat simulation with overwhelming odds. He had to defend a position against continuous waves of enemies, while protecting simulated civilians. It was brutal and seemed designed to be impossible. He threw everything he had into it. Every tactic he knew, every bit of strategy and creativity he could muster. His body moved on autopilot, muscle memory from training taking over while his conscious mind directed strategy. The bracelet on his wrist was burning hot now. Somewhere in his biology, those stress hormones Dr. Yenna had talked about were flooding his system, overriding pain and exhaustion. He was in the berserker state, the thing the progenitor scanner had detected and feared, but he wasn't mindless. That was the key difference. Even in this heightened state, even with hormones screaming through his bloodstream telling him to fight and kill and never stop, Jake remained himself. He made tactical decisions. He protected the civilians. He chose his targets carefully. The simulation ended. Jake collapsed to his knees, gasping. The timer read 69 hours. He had done it. Past the crucible with time to spare. Then a new holographic message appeared and Jake's heart sank. Final challenge. The choice. Simulation detected critical errors in previous diplomatic scenario. You may correct these errors, guaranteeing mission success but requiring 4 additional hours. Or you may proceed to completion now with a passing grade but imperfect score. Jake stared at the message. 4 more hours. He had already been awake and active for 69 hours straight. His body was shutting down. The monitoring device was probably reading vitals that would concern medical staff. Another 4 hours might put him in the hospital or worse, but an imperfect score. The council would use that as ammunition, would argue that humans couldn't quite meet the standard, that they were close but not good enough. He thought about the 18 human cadets depending on him, about Earth's relationship with the Alliance, about proving humanity's worth. Then he thought about the ethical scenario he had faced, the trolley problem, people over perfection. Jake made his choice. He stood on shaking legs and spoke clearly. I proceed to completion. I accept a passing grade. The holographic message changed. Explain your reasoning. Because perfection isn't the standard, Jake said, his voice rough from exhaustion and dehydration. The standard is being good enough, competent enough, human enough to know my limits and work within them. 4 more hours might kill me, and a dead cadet proves nothing except that I was too stubborn to recognize when enough was enough. There was a pause, then the message changed again. Interesting response. Crucible complete. Time 69 hours, 42 minutes. Grade passing. Additional notation. Candidate demonstrated judgment and self-awareness in final decision. The floor beneath Jake opened and he dropped again, but this time only a meter onto a padded surface. Lights came up bright enough to hurt his exhausted eyes. Medical personnel rushed forward with scanning equipment. Commander Vrek stood nearby, his compound eyes reflecting surprise. You passed, Vrek said, as if he hadn't quite believed it possible. I passed, Jake confirmed, then collapsed. He woke in medical 20 hours later. The first face he saw was Lisa's, asleep in a chair beside his bed. When he stirred, she jerked awake. You idiot, she said, tears running down her face. You beautiful, stubborn, impossible idiot. Did I really pass? Jake asked. His memory of the final hours was fuzzy. You passed. Top marks in tactical thinking and problem solving. Acceptable in physical performance despite being a first-year cadet. And something they've never recorded before. You chose to end the test early rather than chase perfection. Lisa grabbed his hand. The council has been in session for 6 hours. They're still debating what it means. Over the next 2 days, while Jake recovered in medical, the academy,